let's kick things off here with the Broncos, because as big of moves that were made, I think this one is still the biggest. I mean, listen, there was a big move made by every single team in this division, but listen, you go out and you acquire Russell Wilson. That is the biggest move in this division, in my opinion. Okay, so Stephen, Nathaniel Hackett takes over for Vic Fangio here for this Broncos team. Hackett coming over from the Packers. He was the offensive coordinator over there for the past 3 years. Justin Alton, it was with the Packers. He's going to be the offensive coordinator. He was the tight ends coach there for the last 3 years. And then you have Ajiro Evero, who comes over from the Rams, where he was a defensive pass game coordinator over there. He's going to be the defensive coordinator for this Broncos team. If we're talking about what came in, of course, I just mentioned Russell Wilson, Randy Gregory also in, Billy Turner, an offensive tackle, also in, Alex Singleton at linebacker, DJ Jones on the defensive line, Quan Williams at corner. You also brought in Tom Compton on the offensive line as well. If you look at the guys that left, Shelby Harris, Noah Fant, Stephen Weatherly, some of the big names of the guys that left for this squad. They didn't have a first-round pick this year, so they came in with a linebacker, Nick Benito, in the second round. They took a tight end, and Greg Dulcich, in the third round, and they took a corner, in Damari Mathis, in the fourth round. So if you kind of look at this roster here, bring in finally a real good quarterback for the first time in several years here. This team has been stumbling over trying to find somebody at the quarterback position. They bring in a couple of offensive linemen to make sure that Russell Wilson isn't running for his life like he was the last few years over in Seattle. Randy Gregory, when he's on the field and healthy, is one of the better defensive disruptors out there. And, what they did lose, I don't think is really all that bad here. Nick Benito is their second-round pick at linebacker, can help shore up that position. All in all, I think that I like what I see in this Broncos team.
So I love what I see on offense, but I am skeptical of the defense, Matt. They lost Vic Fangio. I think this defense is a bit overrated if you look at the traditional stats on paper. This is a defense that opposing offenses had the second worst starting field position. Why was that? It was because they had a very slow offense in Denver that actually did move the ball, but still punted a ton in good field position situations. So the opposing offenses that they faced were starting from very far back, second worst field position, as I said. And they had the lowest opponent possessions sorry, got my mind out of whack here. But, they were number 3 in points per game allowed, but they led the league in the fewest opponent possessions on offense. So the reason why the teams didn't score that many points against the Denver defense is that they just didn't have many opportunities to do so. So in reality, if you look at them on a per drive basis or an efficiency basis, they were 20th in yards allowed per drive in DVOA. And I do think they have pass rush issues. They lost Von Miller with that trade last year. Randy Gregory only had 6 sacks in 12 games. Bradley Chubb, who was supposed to be the heir apparent to Von Miller, had 0 in 7 games. So overall, Matt, I think this is kind of a sneaky over team this year early in the season if the totals aren't quite what we expect. I think if we're getting totals that expect the Denver defense to be elite like a lot of people thought they were last year, this is a team that I'm going to be all overs on. But I do have a lot of faith in this offense.
This offensive line is what really stood out to me, right? I mean, Garrett Bowles at left tackle, you got Rishner at guard, Cushenberry at center, Glasgow at guard, and then you bring in Billy Turner at the other tackle position. I mean, this is a top 10 offensive line for sure, and it might be a top 5 unit if all these guys play up to potential.
Yeah, for me, it's Russell Wilson, right? You have to make one decision or another. You need to decide whether or not Russell Wilson is on the decline in his career or if last year was more related to the finger injury in the middle of the season. So he was 6.3 yards per attempt in his first 4 games, but 7.6 yards per attempt in his final 5. Now, granted, those games were against pretty easy opponents, the Texans, Bears, Lions, and then the Cardinals and Rams. So that might have had something to do with it. But to me, the confidence is more about the coaching staff and what they're going to do for Russell Wilson, because we have lamented for years to let Russ cook in Seattle, and it just hasn't happened. Pete Carroll has put his head in the sand and coached like it's the 1970s. But for Nathaniel Hackett, this is an offensive coordinator in Green Bay that had 211 RPOs last year. They had 63 RPO passes versus just 13 in Seattle for Russell Wilson. Seattle was 29th in passes with pre-snap motion. Green Bay was 7th. And in 2020, Wilson had 282 pre-snap motion pass attempts with a different offensive coordinator than he had last year. And that led to a season where he was top 10 in QBR and total QBR, and he had 40 touchdown passes despite taking the third most sacks. So I think Hackett coming in is a major upgrade for Russell Wilson. I think he has enough weapons on the outside. Do I think they're as good as DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were in Seattle? No, but I think the combination of the scheme and the speed and the talent they have at the receiver and the athleticism they have at the tight end position is going to add up to a lot of points for this team. But I think they're going to have to outscore teams because I think their defense is overrated.
Yeah, listen, it's a lot of this is going to come down to how much Randy Gregory is going to be able to stay on the field, right? I mean, we're seeing a guy that when he's on the field, when he's actually healthy and playing, he's he's quite literally a top 10 quarterback pressure rate guy in the NFL. The problem is just getting him on the field and getting him healthy. Can Bradley Chubb take that next step, right? Because he has certainly underperformed since he's been in the league. So we need him to do that. Now, Patrick Surtain is a star in the making. He was already the 11th ranked corner in all of the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus last season. And he is super, super young and only getting better. So you're talking about a top 10 corner in Surtain. So, I mean, I think the defense has potential certainly to be really good. It just depends on, again, can Surtain continue his ascension? Does Chubb finally come around to at least be an above average player as opposed to a below average player? Can Randy Gregory stay on the field out there? There's a lot of question marks, but as you mentioned on the offensive side, with that offensive line combined with Russell Wilson, combined with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Tim Patrick, who, by the way, is very underrated as far as a receiver goes, and KJ Hamler, you are 4 deep at the receiver position. And now it might not be as good as some of the top 2s that are out there on other teams, but if you're talking 1 to 4, being 4 deep like they are is a pretty big thing. So, I mean, Russell Wilson, if you look right now, if you shop around to win MVP, the best odds you're going to find on him is 16 to 1 on Russ to win the MVP. And listen, if you're bullish on this team, Stephen, I don't hate a Russ MVP ticket, because in order for this team to be really good, they are going to have to win the hardest division in the NFL. So Russ to win the MVP, if you're bullish on the Broncos in general, you should also sprinkle a little bit on Russ to win MVP, because he's going to have to play at an MVP level in order for this team to have that type of success.
I don't hate it. Obviously, the number shortened after he got traded there, and rightfully so. So I'm not sure how much value's left in that number. There's another guy in this division I might be a little bit more interested in. We'll see. But we're talking about a quarterback who now has I know it was Aaron Rodgers, but he was not MVP Aaron Rodgers for back-to-back seasons until LaFleur and Hackett got there, and now Hackett is in Denver. So the one bet that I'm on the fence about, I want to get your opinion on it. It has to do with the running back situation. And I think Javonte Williams is one of the top 5 most talented running backs in the league already, even though he has not been fully unleashed. But I think his scrimmage yards prop is inflated. It's out there at 1,250 and a half total scrimmage yards. This is a guy who played all 17 games last year as a rookie and went under this number. Melvin Gordon is back. He's got a head coach that was more than happy to play 2 running backs almost equally in Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in Green Bay a year ago. And Russell Wilson is below average in targeting running backs each of the past 2 years. In fact, he was 31st last year. So I'm a little bit scared of it because I love the talent. I think he's going to be an incredible running back in this league. But under 1250.5 looks fairly attractive to me at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we got to bake in that we think that this team is probably going to throw a decent amount, right? I mean, look at the division that they're in. They're going up against these teams with the high flying offenses and stuff. And while we think that this team is going to be pretty good, we have to assume they're going to be trailing in some games as well, right? I mean, like this division's just too incredibly strong for them not to be. And so, yeah, I think that is a pretty strong play, no doubt about it. If we look at the strength of schedule, speaking of that, according to Warren Sharp, they are dead center, right? 16th, dead center right in the middle as far as strength of schedule goes. He has them projected at 10.5 wins. If we go over to Football Outsiders, what they're looking at here, their mean projection is 9 wins. They have them as a playoff contender, which they consider to be anywhere between 9 and 11 wins at 40% of the time. They have them making the postseason 49% of the time, and they have them making the Super Bowl at 6.8% of the time. So, Stephen, basically what we're getting here in this Broncos team is, and this is the same for every team in this division that we'll talk about, is a team that is, if they play at their 95th percentile outcome, can be a 11-12 win team, can be a Super Bowl contender. If they play in their 40th percentile outcome, we could see a team below 500. The division's just too tough. If they stumble within the division, you could be looking at 4 or 5 losses just within the division alone, and then any of the other losses that you get somewhere along the way. And I think this is a recurring theme as we talk about the AFC West here, as far as what the ceiling and floor is for all of these squads. That said, I tend to lean a little bit more towards the positive side here. I'm still a believer in Russ. I know a lot of people are thinking that he's big time on the decline. This is going to be the most talented team that he's played with, arguably in his career here. And so we'll find out real quick whether Russ is cooked or not. I don't think that he is, but man, you do look at how the schedule ends up, and they're going to have to bank some wins early, Stephen, because you start in week 13 and it goes Ravens, Chiefs, Cardinals, Rams, Chiefs, Chargers. That is weeks 13 to 18. So you better bank some wins early, because you are going to come out of that stretch at 500. And if you come out at 500, you should be feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, I'm looking at week 1 against Seattle. The total is at 41.5, and that's gonna test my theory real quick, because the Seattle quarterbacks are just crap. So we'll see about that one.
The best odds you're going to find, 18-1, if you do want to take the Broncos to win the Super Bowl.